everything is not interrupted by that. And Karina is going to continue to let people in. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. This is Accessing the Power Within Part 2, okay? Some of the people that are entering the webinar here and joining the webinar from the DFW Network group on Facebook. We also have the Greater North Texas Hispanic Chamber of Commerce with us today. We have some people that may join later that are from the ministries that we built in China, because we were busy with two different churches on Hainan Island in China. Some of the other individuals that may be joining us are from Instagram. Now, what I'm going to do here is I might talk a little faster than I did for the last webinar. I'm going to talk faster this time because we need to make sure that this is 50 minutes. And then at the end of that 50 minutes, I would like to utilize a little of the time to just answer some questions. If you have a question that you feel like is urgent, you can just go ahead and direct message that question. And if I see it, I will try to respond to it, okay? And so, as I stated previously, we have my wife, Karina, who is letting people in. That way I can just focus on doing this presentation and responding to people. Thank you, Karina. I just want to extend a very special thanks to her because I'm the face on everything. One of the people that's doing the most work behind the scenes is Karina. And so, you know, even though you don't see her because she's not front and center, she's one of the reasons that all of this can happen the way that it is. You know, my books, my speaking, my DJ career, my entertainment, everything. Karina is always there, and she has significant influence over it all. So I'd like to extend a special thanks to my wife. So these are my books. Make Today Your Day, 31 Days Later, and We Must Fail to Succeed. I wrote We Must Fail to Succeed in 2011, right before I went to China. And then Make Today Your Day was published in 2018. That book is available on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, every major retailer. If you go to any of their websites, you can get a copy of my book, Make Today Your Day. Also, there's a very short ebook that I wrote, 31 Days Later, that's available on my website, terrancethomas.com, free of charge. You can just download it. You can go and get that today if you want. My next book is titled A New You. And, you know, with the uncertainty that we're facing regarding the pandemic and everything, I cannot know exactly when it's going to be published, but I would like for it to be published and on the international market in 2022. And then shortly after that, I'll write my first political book. It's titled Made by China, A New World Order. My intention is to get that out late 2022 or 2023. We'll see. It just depends on, you know, this pandemic and when Karina and I can get back to Dallas-Fort Worth. So this is my website, terrancethomas.com. This is where you can go and get more information. And once again, my short ebook, 31 Days Later, is available on my website, terrancethomas.com. I already talked about my short ebook. So getting into the information about me. Who am I? Who is this guy that's in front of you and talking to you today? Well, I'm going to be really brief so that we can get done with everything, you know, by the time we get to minute 50, okay? First of all, I'm a regular guy from Fort Worth, Texas. You know, some people observe me in my life right now, and they think that perhaps I'm something that I'm not. Like I come from some affluent family. You know, some people have asked me, are you related to Terrance Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice? And my answer to that is no. I have no idea who he and his family are. So anyway, when I was a kid, when I was about 3 years old, I was down in Georgetown, Texas, north of Austin, south of Dallas, Fort Worth, somewhere down there. And when I was about 3 years old, I was still with the Mexican side of my family. We were all together. The black side of my family and the Mexican side of my family, they were all in Georgetown. And that was about the time that my mom started using drugs, 1989. And the Mexican side of my family, they did not agree with the habits that my mother started to develop. They did not agree with the way that she was doing things. And so they tried to take me away from my mother legally. They tried to get custody of me. And my mother's response to that was just to flee. She got in a car and she took me and she just drove to Fort Worth. I don't know why, but that's what happened. And as a result of that, I'm 35 years old now this year, and I have not seen my father for 32 years. Before I left to China in 2011, I went down to Georgetown, Texas with my mother. And when I was down there, I went into a gas station and there was a lady that was working the cash register and she said, "Terrance." And I was like, "Whoa, who are you?" And she said, "Oh my God, baby, you still look the same." And I said, "Again, who are you?" And she said, "I'm Linda. I'm your Aunt Linda. I'm your father's sister." And I just couldn't believe it. I was in Georgetown, Texas, and I walked into a gas station and this woman just recognized me after, 20, 21 years of not seeing me as an infant, as a toddler. And that was amazing. And so I was so shocked that I didn't get her phone number. I don't know what I was thinking. But other than that, I've had no contact with that side of the family. August of last year, once my wife and I were in Mauritius Island, I decided that I would just take a shot at finding my family on Facebook. And I was successful at doing it. I found all of them on Facebook. My father, my Uncle Buddy, my Aunt Linda, the one that was at that gas station. And unfortunately, they started to block me. They didn't respond to my messages. And, it was just a 100% flat out rejection. And it hurt a little bit. It hurt, but I was fine with it because I've managed to become who I am today without them. And I believe that there are great things coming in the future. And those great things are going to come without them. And I can say that because even though they have demonstrated that they don't have any value for me, I know that God has value for me. And so I can be fine with their rejection. When I was growing up with my mother, times were very tough. If you know anything about the U.S. drug problems of the 1980s and 1990s, that was something that my mother and I, we lived through, out on the streets, begging people for money so that she could buy drugs. I was a little kid in the grocery store stealing bread, stealing bologna and hot dogs. My coat was full of all of these foods and canned goods. We were living in a motel room, and I just remember how my mother would be asleep and we would be locked in this motel room so that, like drug dealers would not come in and kill us. And I remember opening the little refrigerator and there would be salt, bread, and ketchup in the refrigerator. And that was all we had to eat. And so my little brother and I would leave that motel room and go and steal food. I remember sleeping behind a convenience store in glass, under a bridge. I mean, these were the circumstances that I lived through. And some people, they ask me, they say, "Terrance, if you could just go back and you had the opportunity to change your childhood, would you do that?" And the answer is no, I wouldn't, because I feel like I'm blessed today. And so much of my experience, so much of the knowledge that I have, it came from those moments of adversity, that turmoil that I experienced. But one thing that I will say, right, is that those circumstances, they created the environment for me to start hating myself. when we were out on the streets begging people for money, I was always terrified of the other children that went to my school. I was terrified that they might be in those parking lots and that they might see me and that they may go back to school and say, hey, didn't I see you out there asking people for money? Wasn't that you? Wasn't that you? I was always terrified of that. And so my early life taught me to despise who I was. It taught me to be ashamed of who I was. It taught me to hide. It taught me to just stay in the background, you know, be nothing, do nothing, say nothing. That's exactly the way that I perceived myself. I thought that I was the scum of society. I believed that the only thing that I deserved in life was a prison cell or homelessness or ultimately death. This is what I believed that I deserved. And I remember I had a youth minister named Adam. This guy, he taught me about the love of Christ. And one night it was 1 o'clock in the morning and there was a beating on our door at the motel. Boom, 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 boom. And me and my little brother, we ran into the bathtub, we turned the lights off, and then we got into the bathtub because the bathtub is ceramic. And if the drug dealers are going to start shooting at the door, which that is something that happened previously. If they were going to start shooting at the door, you want to be in the bathtub where the ceramic is because the sheetrock of walls would not protect you from incoming bullets. And so we were in the bathtub and my mom, she was looking out the window and she said, hey, it's a white man. I think it's that white man from church. And I was just so excited. I was like, Adam, do you mean Adam? And so my little brother and I, we went to the door and my mom opened the door. Because remember, it's 1 a.m. And this Adam, he was so angry. He said, Tina, I saw you out there with those kids again, panhandling on the streets. They deserve better than this. They deserve better. And my mom slammed the door on him so rudely, but it was his words. Adam, he said, these kids deserve better. Now, this was shocking to me because, first of all, I did not know that I deserved anything that was not a prison cell. I did not know that I deserved a life where I wasn't homeless. And then he also said, better, B-E-T-T-E-R, better. And so these seeds of hope were planted inside of me. I suddenly had to ask myself, well, what is this better that I deserve? What is he talking about? And he said it so passionately. And so he planted seeds inside of me that have led me to where I am today. He also taught me about the love of Christ. And it was because of the love of Christ that I could start to love myself. I wasn't so worried about what everybody thought so much anymore. That wasn't my concern. It wasn't what consumed me. It wasn't priority because regardless of what other people thought about me, my Lord loved me. And that was very significant. Very significant. Once I got to high school, I was a terrible student. And the reason that I was a terrible student was because I had a family member tell me that I was stupid and I didn't learn how to read until I was 10 years old. I was incredibly late. I failed the second grade. And once I got to high school, I was still practicing these bad academic habits that came from the belief that I wasn't smart to begin with. And so when I was in high school, I met my high school teacher, Gene Hayward, who's also on this webinar with us today. And he started this process of teaching me not only that I was smart and capable, but that perhaps in some circumstances, I was a lot smarter and even more capable than the other students around me. And it wasn't just words. You know, so many people, they're going to give you lip service. They're going to tell you, you know, hey, you can do it. You have so much potential. But their behavior and their actions are not demonstrating that you have that potential. And his actions did exactly that. I saw it in his behavior. He spent time with me after school teaching me economics. These things, they meant the world to me. Not only did they get me started in an academic field, which I would go on to college and study in, and would also heavily influence who I am today, but it also got me started with just knowing that, hey, in terms of academics, I could do it. I could do research. I could write papers. I could write books. I could write articles. I learned that in my teacher's class, Mr. Hayward. I learned that about myself. I learned that I was capable and that I could do those things. And that was a huge difference. That made a huge difference in my life. When I was in Abilene, Texas, in college, I came down with cancer in my neck right here. And that was a very tough time in my life. I had a huge knot on my neck, and there were certain people in my life like Tim Palmer. This was a guy from my church in Abilene, Texas. He took me to go and see my cancer doctor. And I said, okay, Tim, thank you. If you can come back in like 1 hour and get me, I'd appreciate it. And this guy looked me in the eye and he said, Terrance, I'm not going anywhere. I am here for you, man. I am here for you. I'm going to stay here during this consultation that you're having. I'm going to stay here. When you go into the meeting with your oncologist, I'm going to stay here. And then when it's time to go, then I'll take you home. I had people like that in my life. And guys like Tim Palmer, he taught me what it meant to actually be there for somebody. That was huge. I called my mom about it and I said, Mom, my doctor just called me. They got the results in from Dallas and they confirmed that I have Hodgkin's disease lymphoma in my neck. My mom started crying and I said, look, Mom, I love you, but I'm not going to talk to you anymore. If you continue to cry because I've already made a decision, I'm going to go through the treatment. I'm going to survive this and I'm going to have a fruitful and abundant life afterwards. And right now, I don't need people that are going to feel sorry for me. I need people that see strength and hope in me. And so if I'm going to talk to your mom, no more crying. And that was the last time my mom cried throughout my entire cancer battle. In 2011, there was this random guy that came to Abilene, Texas, and his mom reached out to me on Facebook and she said, hey, my son's in town. Would you go and play racquetball with him? I was a nice guy, so I agreed to go and play racquetball with this guy. And come to find out, this guy has spent like the last decade in Taiwan. I started talking to this guy about Chinese culture and everything. And there were so many things that he shared with me that just like blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. 30 days after meeting that guy, I packed up my entire life and moved to China. It was very dramatic. It was crazy. Everything. I just dropped everything I was doing and flew away to another country where I would spend the next 9 years of my life. And today I'm going to tell you so much more about that. Okay. So today we're going to cover 4 topics here, and I'm going to start talking even faster now. We're going to talk about success being a choice. We're going to talk about raising your standards, finding advantage in your adversity, and we're going to cover extensively some of the things that happened in China. Now, in regard to all this China business, I just want to warn all of you. Some of this information is going to be fascinating. Some of this information may be terrifying. And then there's also some of this information that might be a little gross. For example, I'm going to talk about food. And for some of you, it might be a little gross, but we're going to get into it because several of you have got in contact with me and said, Terrance, we would like to know more about what happened in China. So we're going to do that today. Success is a choice. It's not a random event that just happens. It doesn't matter if you have a small business and you're building it. It doesn't matter if you're in school and you're trying to graduate or you're trying to build a new habit. Success is a choice that we have to make. It's not going to randomly come to us. One of the things that I've been talking to people about, is that we have to be very specific. Like if we're going to sell books, for example, how many books are we trying to sell? We're trying to sell 2 books, or we're trying to sell 200, 2,000, 200,000. We have to be specific. If we have some goal or objective in mind, when is it going to be achieved? How much money does it cost to achieve that goal and objective? We have to be we have to be very specific with the numbers. And the reason that is because we cannot hit a goal or a target that doesn't exist. You have to develop a very clear vision for what it is that you want to achieve in life. In 2020, last year, we got to Mauritius Island over here in the Indian Ocean. And we knew that we were going to be here for a while because obviously China was locking down. And I just made it up in my mind. I said, you know what? If we're going to be stranded on a tropical island, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to write a new book. And so, in terms of being specific and having targets, right? I just said that every day I'm going to write a chapter. It's that simple. Every day I'm going to do the research necessary, and I'm actually going to pull out my little notebook and handwrite a chapter. So in February, March of last year, I wrote another book within 27 to 30 days. And that book is sitting around here right now. Okay. The same thing applies to you. If you want to do something in your life, you have to be very specific. How much are you going to complete on a daily basis? Are you going to make one phone call? Are you going to send one email? Are you going to host one Zoom meeting? These are the things that you have to decide. Something that's really, really critical is that we all understand that success is not the same for everybody. And I say that because I lived in China, and a lot of people in China, they think that success is owning a Lamborghini. Okay, they think that success is having a Ferrari. And, for me, that just was not success. I have a different definition for success. And so I'm going to look at page 115 of my book here, and I'm going to read about success. Success may be complicated or simple. For one woman I know, success was not work related. She simply wanted to be a better mother to her children, a better wife to her husband. Knowing that, she got a real sense of fulfillment in her life because she knew what she was doing and why. The why we're doing something is key. Is it to impress other people? Is it to take care of our family? Or is it to prove someone wrong? Get closer to your purpose in life by answering those questions. That is really, really critical. This woman that I'm talking about on page 115 in my book here, she wanted to be a better mother and she wanted to be a better wife. That has nothing to do with a massive house. That has nothing to do with a Lamborghini or a bank account that has $500,000 in it. She defined success for herself, and she laid out a plan that was going to help her achieve success for herself. Success is different for everybody. I know what success is for me. And so each of you, that's a decision that you have to make. What is success for you? Are you trying to spend more time with your family? Maybe you are trying to drive a Lamborghini. That would be a vehicle that I would not be driving because it's too low to the ground. So now we're going to go to page 113 here. 113 in my book, Make Today Your Day. And I'm going to talk about some people in the motel room that were with me. Now, I lived in a situation in a motel room, and I cannot explain how dangerous it actually was. There were so many people that were on so many different types of drugs. I talked to some of these people briefly, and I found out who they were. One of them was a black man, one of them was a white man, and one of them was a 16-year-old girl who was a brand new mother. 16. They were all completely different people. The white man owned a construction company. The black man dropped out of high school and had been on drugs for a while. And the teenage mother had recently been introduced to drugs. It was not hard for me to realize two factors as I watched these people. And those two factors are number one, these individuals, they all were from different walks of life, but they were all heading in the same direction. Number two, they were all in my motel room doing drugs while their families and friends were dreading for their lives. And I remember some of the things that God placed in my head. I remember the pain being caused by the actions of these individuals and by the choices that they were making. And I remember thinking to myself how if I did the same thing, that was going to seriously impact my future. Should I decide, should I decide to sell drugs down the road? The young lady that was in the motel room with me, the 16-year-old mother that I mentioned, she did not even remember where she had left her infant baby. She did not know. So I could not imagine myself doing that to the people that I loved. Now, I believe that God's purpose for me in my life included knowing who I was when I was 9 years old, so that when I was 15, I could choose between selling drugs or not. I would know what to do. Did I know why I thought the way that I did when I was 15? No, I absolutely did not, but I was blessed and fortunate to see the glory of God and also to see through the quick cash that could be made through selling drugs. I was sitting in a motel room with this guy named Debo when I was 15 years old, and I was about 40 minutes from starting my new career as a drug dealer. Debo was the guy that was going to give me my first drugs. He was going to give me like $50 of drugs, and I was supposed to go and sell it for $200 or $300. And while I was sitting in that room, I was just thinking to myself, I was thinking about those three individuals from when I was 9. And I was thinking about the direction that they went. And I was thinking about the direction that I was going if I continued down this path with Debo. And just something came over me and I lied. I said, "Hey Debo, I'm going to go and get a soda." He says, "Okay, lock the door behind you." I said, "Okay." Soon as I stepped out of the motel room, I closed the door and I just took off walking. I'm not walking, running. I took off running down the highway in Fort Worth. And I was running as fast as I could because I never wanted Debo to find me again. That was me running from the biggest mistake that I almost made in my life. Now, that was not just random, like it was a decision that I had to make. I couldn't just sit in that chair waiting for those drugs to come and just hope that something changed. I had to make a decision to stand up and get out of that room when I did. And I'm glad that I did because it wasn't even a week later. That was room 215 at the Interstate Motel off of I-20 and I-35. And that's exactly where that story took place. But it wasn't even a week later that the SWAT team, they went to that hotel room, they kicked the door down. I don't know if Debo was in there, but what I do know is that anybody that was in that room, regardless of if they had drugs or not, they were put into the Texas correction system. They were going to prison, regardless if they had drugs or not. I could have been in that room. I could have went to prison. That could have been me. But by the grace of God, I made a decision to get away from that so that I could change my entire life. Raising our standards is something that is really, really critical because your standards are going to influence everything in your entire life. And my mother initially taught me my standards. My mother taught me that it was okay to be behind on my rent. My mother taught me that it was okay to be on the streets hungry. My mother taught me that it was okay to essentially have no goals and objectives in life aside from whatever's going on today. Those were the standards that my mother passed down to me. And standards are critical because a lot of standards are going to become the habits that you have. You're going to live your life every day. You're going to make decisions based on the standards that you have. So I'm reading from page 11 of my book. What are your standards? Have you ever actually considered this question? Living life with higher standards was not something that I was taught with as a child. My bar, in fact, was really low. To me, higher standards meant that I would not go to prison. It meant that I would not choose to be homeless. And it also meant that I would not be without adequate health care. Higher standards in my world also included breaking free from being habitually spontaneous. And that, of course, kept me from being able to focus on my goals in life. Today, I couldn't be comfortable with the idea of living in a motel room filled with rats. I had to raise my standards, which also meant that I could not succumb to the ideas that I grew up with. Higher standards meant that I had the opportunity to live in a place where I didn't have to worry about people breaking in. I didn't have to worry about getting shot by drug dealers or criminals. These are the things that happen when I raise my standards. My community would be safe enough that I would not have to deadbolt my door, because that's what we did right when I grew up in Fort Worth. And so I ended up going to the tropical city of Sanya, China. And if any of you were following my Facebook when Karina and I were in Sanya, you would be able to see the type of life that we lived. And I'm going to share some of that with you all later. But the point is that so much of the way that we lived in Sanya, China versus how I lived in Fort Worth when I was growing up, one of the big differences is simply my standards. Standards of what type of people I associate with, standards in regard to what I utilize my time to build. Standards are something that we have to increase if we want to change our lives. And so I have a passage here on page 12. Your standards are going to determine the way that you spend your time and the quality of work that you provide to others. When you have high expectations for anything that you create, your work will be more detailed and of a higher quality. Your standards in life are going to determine the quality of life that you live and what you accomplish before you leave this earth. When people look back at your life, they will know the standards that you lived by. So much of this information is available in my book, obviously. But one thing that I do want to encourage you all today to do is just to ask yourself, what are your standards? There was this guy, his name was Tim, when I was in Fort Worth, really close to my high school. I was working in a barbecue restaurant. And this guy named Tim, he said, Terrance, you need to be careful when you put your name on something. Because when you put your name on something, that is your brand. And when people see your name on something that is inferior, something that's just not your absolute best, they're going to associate this with you. And so whenever you put your name on something, you just need to make sure that you put effort into it. You need to make sure that you put time and quality into it. Because when people see your name there, they're going to associate this with you. And I took that seriously. And so sometimes, like if you're on Facebook and you see that I write an article about like politics in Asia or something, it's not something that I just put together in 2 minutes. Like that article may have taken me an hour to produce. And the reason is because at the bottom of that article, my name is there. And if my name is there, it needs to be of quality. So finding advantage in adversity is something that I have learned. It's like an art. Not only is it an art, it's a habit. COVID-19 put Karina and I in this interesting situation where we had to just put our whole life on hold. And we ended up on this tropical island here. And, I looked at Karina and I told her, I said, based on the circumstances and based on the information that we have, going back to our life in China, it appears that that's going to be something that's not so possible. And so I believe that we ended up on this tropical island for a reason. I believe that we have been presented with the opportunity to prepare for the rest of our lives. And this is what I told Karina. I said, like, we don't have time to complain about our circumstances and not being able to get back to our home in China, but rather we need to use this time on this island to start building. And that is the advantage that I found in the adversity that we had been handed. On the same note, I remember when I was in college and, like this idea of me becoming a speaker was something that people, kept floating around. They kept suggesting and hinting at it. Hey, man, perhaps that's something that you should consider doing. And I remember thinking to myself, but nobody's ever going to want to hear me. Why would somebody want to hear me? Why would somebody want to hear about this kid that grew up in Fort Worth on the streets? There's nothing interesting about that. Like, what am I supposed to, what information do I have or wisdom do I have that's going to help other people? That is literally the way that I thought. But then I met an Olympic gold medalist named Ruben Gonzalez, and that guy heard me speak and he said, Terrance, you would not believe what you have. You have it, man. There are so many of these CEOs. They're speakers. They're out there, trying to motivate people. They're out there trying to build companies. And they always have to refer to other people's stories because they don't have the experiences that you have. What you have is real. You can do this. And it was like once I met this Olympic gold medalist named Ruben Gonzalez, that's when I realized that there was advantage in the adversity that I had gone through. There was advantage. And that absolutely changed me. That changed the direction that I was going in life. And so what I'm saying to you today is that you too have adversity in your life of some kind. It might be associated with your health. It might be with your family, finances, your job, your business. You have adversity in your life. And what I'm saying is that I encourage you to be creative, to find the advantage in the adversity that you have, because there is advantage there. Now, I can hear somebody here, and what I would like to do is encourage everybody to mute your mics. Okay, if you can hear me, mute your mics. Okay, thank you. Somebody's washing the dishes. All right, so here we go. Now we're talking about arriving in China. We have 15 minutes left. We are doing good. So first of all, going to China was a complete leap of faith for me. I told my mom that I was going to China, and for some reason or other, she thought that I was talking about Chinatown, Texas. She thought that there was some small town somewhere near Georgetown or Waco called China, Texas. And I was like, no, Mom, let's look at the globe here. This is the United States. Let's roll over this way. On the other side of the globe, Mom, this is China. And her eyes got big and she just said, I forbid you to go. My mother told me that she did not want me to go to China, and I went anyway. It was a leap of faith for me. When I went to China, I did not know what I was getting into, as you all are about to find out, but it was huge for me, absolutely huge. I spent 9 years in China, and it changed me significantly. I landed in China, and I was in the city of Chengdu. And when the plane was coming down, the first thing that I noticed was this cloud of pollution. It was so thick. It was just, oh my gosh, the smog. I can't even describe it to you. It's like if everybody had barbecue pits going at the same time and we're all in a room with the windows closed and the doors shut. Okay, and that's what it was like as the plane was coming. There was not fog. It was just a haze of pollution. And we landed, and I remember there was this Chinese man with my name. His name was Jin, and his handwriting was terrible. Like, this guy didn't speak any English, and he could not write English either. And my name, I can't even believe that I could read my name. But anyway, I got in the car with Jim, and as we were leaving the airport, I remember there's this giant panda that they had at the entrance of the airport spinning around. And as soon as we got past that panda, that was when I knew that I was in a different world. The road had massive potholes in it. There were power lines hanging down. Jim, he was driving directly into oncoming traffic. There were women and children crossing the street. Jim was blowing his horn, and I am sure that he was cursing at them in Chinese, telling them to get out of the way. He was driving on the sidewalk. People were moving out of the way. He's blowing at people while he was driving on the sidewalk. I saw the police. The police were sitting on their car, no shoes on. They were drinking. You can tell that they were getting drunk because they had these wine bottles and flasks, and they were just sitting there drinking. And like, I'm making direct eye contact with the police while this guy is driving on the sidewalks and directly into oncoming traffic. And the police see me and they're just like, they're waving. I mean, it was just absolute chaos. That really like opened my eyes to the fact that, hey man, you're not in Texas, you are not in the US, and you have landed in a new place. After a little while of being in China, I mean like a week or two, I was invited to this restaurant, okay? And they have this way of cooking called hot pot, where there's a hole in a table and there's this cooking mechanism there. They put a lot of oil and spices in there, and all of the oil starts to boil, and then vegetables and meat will go in there, and then everybody starts picking out the food right there that's cooking in the middle of the table. And so I was at this restaurant with these new friends from my job, and they were bringing the meat. The first thing that I remember was these frog legs. They brought frog legs, and the legs were like twitching. And they put these frog legs into the oil. And these frog legs are still twitching in the oil. And then the next thing they brought out was eel. It was a tray of eel, and they were bleeding. And these eels, their gills were still moving, like they had literally just slaughtered and cleaned these eels. And they put these eels into the oil, even though they clearly were alive still. And then the one thing that really just caught me off guard was when they came out with the pig brain. It was the tray with like 9 brains on it. And they started putting the brains into the oil. Now, once again, I would say everything that went into that oil, everybody picked out and they ate it with rice. It was crazy. Rewinding a little bit, there was this lady named Tracy, and her job was to show me my apartment community when I first arrived. And at some point or another, we were looking at my apartment, and it was a nice apartment. Tracy said to me, she said in Chinese, "Are you hungry?" I didn't understand her when she said that, but what I did understand was her rubbing her stomach. I was like, oh, she must be asking me if I wanted to go and get something to eat. So I was like, yes, I'm hungry. Where's McDonald's? And she didn't know what McDonald's was. And so she took me into this little Chinese restaurant, right? And I will put my disclaimer out right now, okay? All Chinese restaurants in China are not like this. But if you go into, the countryside areas, outside of the big city, you'll find more restaurants like this. We walk into this restaurant, and I see this lady chopping chicken, right? She's chopping chicken, and she's picking her nose, and she just continues chopping. There's absolutely no hand washing. And I'm like, oh no, I don't think I want to eat here. The walls were absolutely filthy. There was just grime all over the walls. This lady, Tracy, she didn't speak one word of English, and so she ordered food for me because the people in the restaurant didn't speak English either. So a bowl arrived in front of me, and it was a bowl of noodles. Clearly, it was noodles. Okay, I'm familiar with noodles. We all are, right? But here goes the distinguishing factor. These noodles had a chicken head floating in them. There was a chicken head floating in my noodles. Okay, and I have to tell you all right now, I couldn't eat it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't touch that bowl. Not only did I see the lady picking her nose and chopping chicken, but apparently she just went and put the chicken's head that she chopped with her dirty hands into my noodles. I couldn't do it. So anyway, later on, I saw the advertising near my home for Captain America, September 2011. And I had to go and see Captain America. It was at the movie theater that was really close to my home. I went to the movie theater and I found this one guy there that spoke English. And he said, "Oh, yes, come back tonight in 3 hours. And we have Captain America. It's all in English with Chinese subtitles." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is great." And so I came back when it was time for the movie to start. And the people, they wouldn't sell me the tickets. I didn't understand why the people wouldn't sell me the tickets. And so I asked the guy that spoke English because he had just came to work. And I said, what's going on? Why are these people not selling me the tickets to Captain America? He says, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. But we didn't sell that many tickets to that Captain America movie. So we're not going to play it because we're trying to save electricity." And I was like, "What?" But I bought a ticket. Don't I deserve to see the movie because I bought a ticket? He's like, no, it doesn't work like that. We have to sell enough tickets to justify using the electricity to show the movie. And I was like, "Man, what is this place? What is going on? What kind of movie theater is this?" I was so upset. Now, in Texas and around the United States, we are kind of familiar with the idea of helping someone in need. If you see a person that is on the road because they just collapsed because of a heat stroke, you pay attention to things like that. You call 911, you go over there and shade the person, you try to give them water, you do something. Well, in Chengdu, China, the concept of being a good Samaritan doesn't exist. Now, I'm just going to warn you. I'm going to warn you all before I say the things that I'm about to say. It's a little graphic, okay? It's a little graphic. So when I was in Chengdu, China, I have never seen more dead bodies in my life. I am not even joking. Dead bodies. A man, a woman, a child, somebody gets hit by the bus and they're on the side of the road and people just keep walking. They just keep walking. People do not stop to help. I remember I was walking across the street one time and there was clearly an accident before I had walked up to that intersection because there was windshield glass on the ground. There was blood streaks on the ground, and I saw a piece of somebody's brain on the ground. Like the cleanup crews, they did a very poor job. I saw the situation where like these mafia guys, there was like 19 of them, and they had this one dude on the ground and they were just beating him. The police came. It was like 10 cops. They got out of the van, and the mafia leader went and talked to like the sergeant or the captain of that little group of police officers for 1 minute. All of the police officers got back in their van and drove away and let the mafia continue to beat that guy. Now, the reason that I'm sharing this part with you all because like when you go to China, it's a completely different world, completely different world. And it's interesting because like I talk to Chinese friends, like why is it that Chinese people are not likely to help each other when something's happening? And come to find out, China's full of scams. Like if you see somebody on the road and you go and try to help them, whenever the police or the paramedics arrive, that person is going to blame you. "Oh, he hit me." I mean, there's just all kinds of scams going on. And like they have video footage of, like a person has a dash cam in their car And so the dash cam is recording everything. And there's like video footage of an individual who runs and jumps on the hood of somebody's car, rolls off, and then tries to say their neck and their back is broken. And they're trying to blame the driver. But the driver's like, no, 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 no. I have video of you jumping on the hood of my car. You're not going to get away with that lie. And so this kind of thing actually happens in China. And as a result of it, the whole idea and concept of being a good Samaritan is not there. And this is one of the reasons, like I was saying earlier, like I've never seen so many bodies in my life. When serious things happen, fatalities happen, people just keep walking by. It is a completely different place. So there's these little taxis called a Sanlo and Chuk. There's a 3-wheeled vehicle, and these people will take you as far as they can go. Usually these are electric. And so when I first got to China, I did not know how much I was supposed to pay these guys. I didn't know at all. And so I used to open my wallet and they would just take some money out. I didn't know the exchange rate between the US dollar and Chinese RMB. I didn't know at all. So I was usually paying, maybe like $30 to $80 for a ride that should cost 50 cents. That is the truth. Because I would open my wallet and just let them take money. I didn't know how to speak the language, okay? When you go to China, they have these toilets that are basically a hole in the ground. And when you see these toilets, a lot of you would probably, just put your eyes in that specific direction. You'll look in that direction and you would say, no, I'm not even going in there. And you would walk away. Some of those toilets that are all over China are disastrous. And when I arrived in 2011, smoking was something that was still accepted and embraced. It was pretty normal for people to be smoking everywhere, on a train, on a bus, at the hospital. The doctor would be, doing his job and smoking while he was at it. It was crazy. In China, when you go out to dinner or something like that, people are not going to go Dutch. They're not going to split the bill as easily as you would think. What they're going to do is they're going to fight over who gets to pay. And I'm not talking about like trying to put it on somebody else. Like, hey, you need to pay Bill. We went out last time and you didn't pay. No, it's not that situation. It's like, hey, I'm going to pay and you guys need to sit down and let me pay. And they're actually arguing over who gets to pay. That was something that was completely different to me. So at this point, okay, it is time for us to end the presentation. For all of you that are here, I appreciate you for joining us. If you need to go, that's okay. Karina, can you tell me how many people are there? 12? Okay, so if some of you need to go, that is perfectly fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with this and then I'm going to get into some pictures, okay? So that you can actually see with visual aids what I'm talking about, okay? So for all of you that have to go, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it so much. I'll see you next time. And for those of you who are going to stay, I will continue now. So in China, staring is incredibly common. Like in Texas, you don't just stare at somebody and not say hello or wave or something like that. But in China, you're foreign and people see you and they're going to stare. And that is not a sign of aggression at all, And so that was one of the things that I liked in China, because people could stare at me and I could just stare back at them and there was no problem. But in Texas, you don't do that. If you're staring at people, some people are like, hey, do you have a problem? And so that was one of the good things about being in China. In China, being fat in China is it's considered cute. Okay, when I first arrived in China, I was pretty heavy set. I was probably like 290, maybe even 295. Like I was a heavy guy, okay? And people quickly, people quickly let me know that, that's an attribute, as a fat guy in China. And initially my Chinese name was Da Pengzi. That means big fat. That's what that means. There's 3 Chinese characters you see on the screen here, Da Pengzi. And then later on, I changed my Chinese name to Meiguo Heilong. And what that means is American Black Dragon. I thought that was much better than being called big fat, okay? And so When you go to China, you'll find out very quickly that a lot of Chinese people have this obsession with health. Especially in West China, you'll be eating something and people are like, oh, that is so unhealthy. You're eating chocolate. That is so unhealthy. You're drinking a Coke. That is so unhealthy. If they can speak English, they're going to tell you this. But here is the hypocrisy of it. They're going to tell you how unhealthy it is while they're smoking a cigarette and probably drinking Chinese rice wine. Yeah, that's unhealthy. You shouldn't be doing that. And another part of it was like the pollution was so heavy. Like everybody were basically inhaling these fumes from factories every single day. And so I think that the whole idea of trying to be healthy over there in West China just went out the door as soon as you started breathing the air. Traditional Chinese medicine, for a lot of Western people, like it can just be weird. Okay. Like there's so many different types of medicine that's made out of seeds. There's some different medicine that's made out of flowers and petals, turtle shell, uh, certain types of blood, the horn of a rhinoceros. When you go into the traditional Chinese medicine shop, you will see like, what is it? A seahorse, like all of these dried seahorses, beetles. I mean, you'll just see it all. And like all of these different plants, herbs, roots, animals, it's all turned into different types of medicine. Now, some people have asked me previously, like, what was your experience with Chinese traditional medicine? Did it work? There was this one time when I was having serious stomach issues, and my Chinese traditional doctor gave me this medicine that was basically a root that was made into powder, and it worked. You drink this powder with water, and it worked. It fixed my stomach. I haven't had stomach issues since. And so, uh, some of the biggest international companies are actually in China, and one of them is like Walmart. Walmart is there. The first time that Karina and I went to a Walmart in Tianjin, which is a huge city near Beijing, one of the first things that I noticed when I went to the food section was they had a shark on the ice. Okay. Whenever you go to Kroger, Albertsons, or Walmart, I'm pretty sure, you go to the seafood section and you'll see certain items that are available fresh on the ice. Well, that was the first time that I saw a great white shark on the ice. It was a great white or a tiger shark. I can't tell you. And this is what was at Walmart on the ice. There was another occasion when I went to one of these Chinese markets. And at the Chinese markets, you may have heard about this with the outbreak of the pandemic, because apparently, COVID-19 came from one of these markets in Wuhan. Well, when you go to these markets, you'll see all kinds of stuff. I mean, like I remember seeing sea turtles, these endangered salamanders. They had these lobsters that were like brightly colored with the longest antennas, and like that was some kind of a rare creature. They had these chickens that were black. They had buckets and buckets of turtles, buckets of frogs. They had alligator. They had dove. They had so many different types of snakes that were all alive in a cage. And you can order any of this and they'll just chop it up right on the spot for you and put it in the bag. And so, I was in China for a very short period of time. And, like this was the first time that I had ever gone to one of these markets. And, like I remember like some of the stories and questions that people had, like, hey, is it true that, like you can get a cat in China? And so I went to this one man who had doves, snakes. I didn't know how to speak Chinese. And I said, meow, meow. And the man was like, oh, Jadaula, Denisha. And so the man went into a freezer and he came back with a frozen cat. And he had a frozen cat in his hand. It was clean, okay? The fur was removed and everything. Like clearly, this cat was clean and frozen for consumption. Clearly, he had the cat. I was shocked. I didn't know that this guy was actually going to return with the cat. And he was asking me in Chinese if I needed a bag or not. I just turned around and I ran away because I wasn't going to buy that cat. I wasn't going to eat that cat. And so whenever you go to these markets in China, these are the kinds of things that you will see. And it's just part of Chinese culture because of some of the events that took place in the late 60s and 70s when the country was in famine. The Chinese people, they started eating everything that they could find and capturing it, essentially. So anyway, here goes a photo of traffic in Chengdu, China. Okay. If you can observe, you can just see that the vehicles are going every single direction. It is absolute chaos there. Okay. That was common. If you got into a vehicle during rush hour, you could expect to possibly be in that vehicle 45 minutes to an hour to go a very short distance. This is what my restroom looked like in my first apartment, except for my restroom was a lot better than this. You see the hole in the floor toilet there. And when you take a shower, the water is going to go into a small drain in the corner, and the other water is going to just go into the toilet. In this type of restroom, you have to like not step in the toilet. You could trip and fall and break your neck if you stepped in the toilet. Okay. And this is just a picture I got off the internet because the apartment that I moved in when I first got in China was brand new. This entire community was brand new. It was beautiful. Okay. The toilet and everything was exactly the same, but it didn't look this run down. These are some of the different things that you see in Chinese traditional medicine. We have goji berries behind my logo. You have some different types of roots and nuts. All of this can be made into medicine that, you know, treats different issues. One of the things that can be said about a lot of Western medicine is that a lot of Western medicine is designed to make the pain go away. But Chinese traditional medicine is designed to actually attack the real problem and heal you. And so your issue actually goes away. And so, like I said, my experience with Chinese medicine was, hey, it worked. It worked for me. And here, you have a picture of the meat section at Walmart on the left-hand side. And yes, those are pork faces, okay? In China, pork faces, the nose, the ears, all of this, these are like delicacies and they can be made into a number of different dishes. And on the bottom right-hand corner here, you have hot pot. Right in the middle of the table, you'll have this pan of boiling oil. And they will put garlic, and they will put the pig brain or the frog legs or the fish. Sometimes the fish were alive when they went in there. And all of this stuff would just cook right there. And you would take your chopsticks and pick it out. And one thing that I never understood in China was why people would buy wingtips. On the left-hand side of your screen, you are looking at the tip of chicken wings. Now, I don't get it. Okay, first of all, my question is, where did the rest of the chicken wing go? Because that's where the meat is. Where did it go? And when you would go to like some of these incredibly prestigious restaurants, they don't bring you a whole chicken wing. They just bring you these wing tips. So if wing tips were being served for dinner, if you came in hungry, well, my apologies, you're going to leave hungry. Now I'm a vegetarian now, so I don't eat any of this stuff anymore. I've been a vegetarian for going on 40 years. But when I was in China, the item that you see on the right-hand side, this is chicken feet, okay? Chicken feet. Now, chicken feet did not gross me out. Some people are grossed out by the idea of chicken feet, but I was perfectly fine, you know, with chicken feet. In fact, I was a fan of chicken feet. When people came over my house to visit and everything, I always had these packs of spicy chicken feet, and I would just give chicken feet to everybody. I enjoyed chicken feet. But that was me like 4 years ago when I was a meat eater. Now, here you are looking at a river called Joyangchao in Chengdu, China. And there's this beautiful, beautiful bridge that crosses, that goes across the river. On one side of the river, you have what is known as the bar street, all of these small local bars that maybe have like 5 to 6 tables in there. And it's just a really friendly place to be. And then across the street, you have like this entire like fashion property called Lan Kwai Fong, where there's these huge nightclubs, extreme shopping, beautiful restaurants and everything. And so this area near this river, like this was a place that you want to be. I would occasionally see old Chinese guys fishing in that river. And I was like, how could they do that? That is gross. You could smell that water. That water was not clean. But that area was really nice to be around. And then on the picture at the bottom here, this is a picture of an area called Jinli, which is a traditional Sichuan culture area. It's very famous for tourism. And you can just see like the old way of life in China if you go there. Now, if you look at this right here, this is the three-wheeled vehicle that these guys used to drive. And I used to take these all the time. And like I was saying, if you get into this vehicle, the ride should cost like 50 cents. But I was paying like $30 to $50 because I used to allow these guys to go into my wallet and just take money because I didn't know how much it costs. And when they were telling me, 3块钱, 3块钱, I had no idea what that meant at the time. I couldn't understand Chinese. And so anyway, yeah, it's incredibly cheap to just take one of these, and they're great for sightseeing as well. And so here, this is when Karina and I moved to Hainan Island. On the left-hand side, you're looking at the Atlantis Hotel and Resort. And on the bottom side, the picture on the bottom is also the Atlantis Hotel and Resort. They had a water park there, and I was the DJ at the water park. And so like 5,000 people would come to the wave pool, and I would be on the stage there DJing. And it was just a phenomenal experience to be out there like that. I was working at the Atlantis. I think that was one of the highlights of my life. This right here is a beach. It's kind of a hidden beach, actually. It's called Hohai. And Karina and I, we went here just to relax. It was actually just maybe 30, 40 minutes drive away from our home. And a lot of people that were like into surfing, both Chinese and foreign, they would always go to Hohai to go surfing because this is where you would see some of the biggest waves in Hainan. This right here is a whole bunch of Chinese students celebrating National Day. One of the things that I did observe after 2012, when President Xi was elected, was the idea of being Chinese was something that, that was something that they should be proud of. And so there was a lot of nationalism going around and a lot more flag waving after 2012. And so these are a lot of kids that I knew that I worked with. This right here is a picture in Sanya Bay, which was on the western side of Sanya City on Hainan Island. It was a very popular tourist destination, and Karina and I, we would always be on yachts right around these waters here. And occasionally we would just go to the beach there and, take some sunset pictures there. And this is where we lived in China. This is me working for the yacht company. We had events very often. I mean, it was just something that was unbelievable for me to be able to just go out to sea, have fun, and get paid to do it. That was absolutely amazing. I loved it. This is also a picture from an area that was like 10 minutes from our house. There was a hotel called the Mandarin Oriental, and before you actually enter this hotel, this is the sight that you would see. There's breathtaking. This is a picture of Karina getting ready to fly away, okay? And if you look at the Chinese characters on that helicopter there, you can see it says, Hainan Yanoda Yulin Wenhua, okay? Hainan Yanoda Rainforest Cultural Tourism Zone. Anyway, we took a helicopter flight around the southern part of Hainan Island from Yanoda, and it was amazing. I can't even describe how awesome it was. Just beautiful. And so anyway, there's more information to share with you all, but I am going to start concluding here just to talk to you all, take some questions if you all have them. Okay, I'm opening the floor. And I want to thank you all for being here. So now it's time for questions. Go ahead and hit me if you have them.
favorite food, Terrence, in China? What would it be?
But right then, there's this Chinese dish, which is really close to bacon with jalapenos. It's like you take a slab of bacon, you cut it real thin, and then you fry it up with jalapenos and serve it. And so you have a plate full of pork and all of these chilies and spices. And Chinese, it's called hui guo rou. When I was a meat eater, that was my favorite dish. When I became a vegetarian, suddenly I didn't have a favorite dish in China anymore. All right then. Oh, Sienna's there. Okay, so are there any more questions here? Oh, Sienna's still on the call. Okay. Any more questions? Just unmute your mic and go ahead and put your questions out there if you have them.
Okay, Terrance, this is Sienna. How are you?
Fantastic. Hey, Sienna.
Awesome. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to attend. So let me ask you, and you may have mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
So are you still DJing, or what's going on with your music venture?
Okay. Fantastic question. Well, actually, I am DJing, like occasionally, like maybe once or twice a month. I work at the hotels and resorts here at on Mauritius Island. And
Okay, cool.
I just released a music video yesterday. I have a song called Party Flick and Flack. And if you just scroll down on my main Facebook page,
Okay,
you'll see that music video that I posted. And
awesome.
so my producers are in Russia, and they are also in, you can stop the video. They're in Russia and the Ukraine.
Cool. I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah.